just poking around in the Discord, trying to fix that little unknown issue. While we wait for other folks to get in, we'll start in just a couple moments. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to say hello or ask me them, and I will do my best to answer. Server settings. I know what I am doing. Maybe that's changed now. Let's see if that works. I guess good morning. Did I say good morning? What did I say? I sometimes will say good morning when it's not morning, just reflexively, because I always say good morning. But I don't know what I said, because I was paying attention to other things. How are folks? Yeah, we still got plenty of time before morning. I don't know what you're complaining about. I know some of you have seen, I've dropped a link into the Discord asking folks to fill out a little survey about when is a good time for broadcasting. I have a somewhat regular sleep schedule, and so I'm generally available between, what is it? 1700 and 0500 UTC. For those of you who don't understand what I said, usually between noon and midnight Eastern US time is when I'm available for these sorts of broadcasts. So I'm trying to find a time in that window that is a good time for everybody on the planet, which is not possible, but we'll see what I can do. Discord is telling me I should have started the broadcast 16 seconds ago, so we'll give it another minute or so before we get started, because I need to hit slideshow so that my computer is aware of what's going on. Out of curiosity, this is just a question for the folks in the chat. How many of you who come to these live broadcasts have also already watched the video or read the transcript? How many of you have already consumed this content? And for how many of you is this the first time you're actually, looking at it? I'm curious, for how many people, this is a refresher, and for how many this is the actual content. Checkered says first time. Toxic Korean says normally watch the content as soon as you can. Okay. Right now, solid 50-50 split. I know I'm not going to get, statistically relevant data with a dozen or so people watching, or half dozen, but yeah, I think most people will generally be familiar with the content that I'm covering in any given lesson, at least so far. But it's interesting to see where these lessons are falling in as a use case. Plus, as I've mentioned in previous one, half of the goal is a basics and going over the core fundamentals so that somebody who's confused or doesn't have as much understanding of the rules gets an opportunity to get those basics in. And the other half is to people who have seen the lesson, have read the rules, really know what's going on, and have weird questions about corner cases And so we're serving two different audiences here, and I think I'm seeing that with this. Checkered, I am not terribly familiar with the judge program or the professor program. I have some friends who are involved with it, but I myself am not involved with it. Why do you ask? Does it have... I'm very curious to know how they run their program, because more knowledge from more people results in... I guess more perspectives results in a better end product, because I can take into consideration their good ideas, borrow them, and turn them into something excellent over here. While you answer that, we're going to see if I manage to get rid of the transitions. Fantastic. We're not going to just flicker through all of these lessons instantaneously. Oh, nice. If you want to drop the link to that in chat, that would be very cool for me to see. And it might also be useful for other folks to take a look. While their rules and policy obviously are going to be different than ours, the way that you can do, like, the way you judge is still valuable. Well, it's unfortunate that it's not publicly accessible. I understand that. Judge Academy, which was the Magic Judge Program's educational tools, those were behind a login. Previously, a volunteer-run organization from the Magic community had some lessons public. I do like the idea of lessons being public, because it just means that players have access to them, and people who are interested in becoming judges have access to them. But I also absolutely understand protecting that sort of information. Toxic Korean says, I want to branch out and start judging for shops around my area. Would I want to wait to be picked from the judge program, or would it be possible to reach out and ask? This is 100% led by you. This is something that you'll have to do. We, other than staffing for Season 0, staffing for the October Planetary Qualifiers in particular, Cascade is not going to be assisting stores directly in staffing. We're going to give stores access to tools that will help them find judges, but we are not going to be proactive on your behalf. We are not a staffing agency. My boss, Tim, wants me to be very clear on that. We're not going to take your application and find work for you. It is on you to find work for yourself. So absolutely reach out to your local store. As Curse Strife says, probably best to reach out to the store. A Discord server for your local community, a Facebook group, that sort of thing. Those are great places to go. The way I judged my first event is I walked into my local store where I was playing Magic relatively frequently. I went to the store employee that I knew best and said, hey, I want to judge here. What do I need to do? And they pointed me to a couple of judges in the back playing a game and said, talk to them. They'll get you certified. And then once you're certified, you'll talk to the staffing manager, the events manager, and they'll start putting you on events. And so I had that. They ran me through some classes. And about 2 months later, I was running events for them. With that included the whole certification process. So with this, you should already, like, in a couple months, when the level 1 test is available, you'll be able to go up to them and say, hey, I have this level 1 certification. I'd like to run a couple events for you, or I have the Judge Apprentice certification. I'd like to run a couple of events for you. Can you get me in on a weekly swoon night, or can you get me in on a showdown or something like that? And they'll be able to help you out from there. But let us cut over to the lesson. If you have more questions, Toxic Korean, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I am so easily distracted by anything anybody ever says in chat. But I'm going to get started on the lesson, as it is midnight here, and I have D&D in the morning. Fantastic. So, we're going to be talking about action timings and clarifications. This is essentially just going to be talking about the 3 core game actions of play a card, attack with a unit, and use an action ability. We're going to talk about play a card and use an action ability at the same time, because other than a couple small general rules, they pretty much function identically. And then we'll talk about attacking with the unit. The other neat thing is that Section 6 uses subsection 0, which doesn't exist anywhere else in the comprehensive rules. This is so that 6.1 is also step 1, or 6.2.1 rather, is step 1 of playing a card, and it lines up numerically. So, let's dive right in with 6.2.0 and 6.4.0, some general notes. Cards have to be played from hand. That's not too terribly surprising. It's pretty much how most card games work. While there are cards that let you play them from other locations, you can generally only play cards from your hand. However, You're My Only Hope lets you play a card from your deck. Dryden Voss lets you play a card from the arena into the arena. And Second Chance lets you play a card from your discard pile. And of course, Smuggle lets you play cards from your resource zone. You can't play anything from your base zone. You can deploy leaders. And you... Is that the only zone you can't play anything from? I think that's the only zone you can't play anything from. Which is wild. Each time a card is played, it is a new copy of that card. So if you use Home 1 to return a card from your discard pile, that card costs 3 less. If it is defeated and you play another Home 1, that cost reduction doesn't stack. It's not going to cost 6 less. It's a new copy. That effect no longer applies to it. Doesn't deploying a leader count as playing the leader as a unit? So, no is the short answer. The longer answer is the leader is put into play. It is deployed and put into play, and will eventually leave play when it is defeated, but it is not played. Let me double check my CR here. Because it is weird. Leaders are funky. So, under... Oh gosh, I just jumped here, so I don't know what section I'm in. Under card types 3.4.4, a leader is deployed using the epic action on its leader side. It is considered deployed, not played. However, the leader side leaves play, leaving the base zone, and the leader unit side enters play simultaneously. So things that are looking for a card that enters play, those will trigger. However, if you're looking for something when played, like Yularen, that won't trigger. So it comes into play and leaves play for, I believe Hello There will be relevant. For those of you who aren't familiar with Hello There, choose a unit that entered play this phase. It gets -4/-4 for this phase. A leader will be considered entering play for an effect like Hello There, but it was not played. Checkered, I don't know if you were lied to or if somebody was confused. As we just saw, I had to look up the comprehensive rules, and I've written multiple lessons on how leaders are deployed and not played, so it is very easy to get confused about, especially since it was previously they were deployed and then they never came into play because they were already in play, and so they never... It was messy, and then they changed the rules, and now they're like, yes, they enter play, but they were not played, and that's just a weird language thing, and especially if you're in a community where English isn't the primary language, that distinction isn't clear. So yes, they did errata the way leaders work, but it's not for entered play. Previously, they didn't enter play at all. They were always considered in play as a singular card, but now they leave the base zone as a leader and enter as a leader unit. But they are not played. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. I think y'all understand it, because that chat seems to understand it. But it is not necessarily the most clear language. I think it's relatively... It is somewhat intuitive for players, with regards to them having entered play, because you play it, but it not triggering when played is weird. And I got rid of my... Did I get rid of my script? Yeah, I did get rid of my script. I need to go back to my script so I know what I'm talking about. Because otherwise, I'm just going to be guessing on what the next slide is. Great. So, you have, in addition to being able to play cards, you have to have, to use an action, you have to have an action ability. Either a bolded action followed by a cost and then a colon, or epic action and similar potential cost and a colon. That's an action ability. You have to have one of those to be able to use an action ability, and either paying the cost of using the ability or resolving the ability must change the game state in order for you to be able to use that ability. An ability that has a condition, as seen on the leader Iden Versio, or an action ability that references a particular type of unit, as seen in the Grand Leader Inquisitor, can be used as long as paying the cost or resolving the ability change the game state, even if that condition or unit isn't available. So you can activate Iden Versio even if no enemy unit was defeated. You can activate Grand Inquisitor even if you don't have a friendly unit with 3 or less power. Because for both of them, exhausting the leader changes the game state. Epic actions are a special type of ability that can only be used once per game. A player can use an epic action even if paying its costs doesn't change the game state, because changing the status of epic action to used does. So you can Energy Conversion Lab and not play a card from your hand. You can use Tarkin Town when there isn't a damaged unit in play, etc., etc. Because putting that used counter or token onto your base to mark out that the epic action has been used does count as changing the game state. Now, to play a card or to activate an ability, you have to be able to pay all associated costs, including modifiers and additional costs. Paying costs or resolving the ability, as mentioned, must change the game state. We talk about exactly what the game state is back in Lesson 3. And then we get to the 5 steps of playing a card or using an ability. Step 1, you declare your intent. Step 2, you check your restrictions. Step 3, you determine your costs. Step 4, you pay your costs. Step 5, you resolve the card or ability. Let's go through these one at a time. Step 1, declaring intent. Intent is the easiest by far. You reveal the card from your hand or wherever you're playing it from, or announce that you are playing it or activating the ability. Card remains in the zone that you're playing from. That's all you do. Any abilities that become active while playing or while activating become active. After that, we need to make sure that you're able to do it. We do this second because we can't check these restrictions before the card is publicly known. If the card is in your hand, there's no way for, the card doesn't exist or the game isn't aware of the attributes of the card and your opponent isn't aware of the attributes of the card, and so you can't, until the action has been declared, you can't check for legality. Regional Governor is, I believe, the only card right now that can create a hard restriction like this. However, all upgrades require a unit to be in play, and some upgrades specify attributes of the unit, such as type, trait, or which player controls the unit. If you don't have a unit you control, you can't play Legal Authority. If you don't have a vehicle, you can't play Hardpoint Blaster, that sort of thing. If the action that you declared can't be completed because of these restrictions, you have to choose a new action. Now, if it's legal, we now need to determine costs. The way we do this for cards, you're going to look at that number in the upper left-hand corner, and then you'll add any increases, subtract any decreases, and finally include any additional costs. Right now, Saw Gerrera is our only friend who's providing any additional costs, I believe, in the entire game. Everything else, every ability has all of its costs baked into it, and the only other thing that happens is some things increase or decrease the cost of cards, like we see on Del Meeko, Bib Fortuna, Jabba the Hutt, and several others. Cost modifiers do stack cumulatively, and if the cost would be reduced to 0 or lower, it's treated as 0. So let's do a quick little walkthrough. We're playing Waylay. Our opponent controls a Del Meeko. We've activated a Bib Fortuna, and we control a Jabba the Hutt. The event costs 3, plus 1 because of Del Meeko, minus 1 because of Bib Fortuna, minus another 1 because of Jabba the Hutt, and so it costs a total of 2. If we're playing a Twin Suns game, and each of our opponents has a Del Meeko, the Waylay gets its cost increased by 3. We have a cost reduction of 2, and so it would end up costing us a solid 4 resources if we were playing Twin Suns with 3 opponents and they each had a Del Meeko, which sounds just truly, truly miserable. Alrighty, now that we've determined costs, we pay the costs. You exhaust resources equal to the total cost. You cannot exhaust additional resources, and if a player cannot pay all costs, you reset the game to before step 1 and choose a different action. One of the reasons you can't exhaust, it is a design choice that you can't exhaust additional resources, which means that if your opponent, for example, plays something like DJ to gain control of one of your resources, if you know or presume that they are going to play DJ and you're going to be passing on your next turn, or you're going to be claiming the initiative because you don't have anything else you can do, you only have 1 resource left, you can't choose to overpay and exhaust it. Your opponent will have the opportunity to steal that readied resource from you. So far, everything making sense? I'm just burning through these. Again, as always, please, if you have questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to keep on going because we get to the final exciting step of playing cards and activated abilities. It's resolution. Once the card is paid for, it resolves. Units and upgrades are put into play, and then when played abilities trigger, so they're in play when those abilities trigger. Events are put into the discard pile, and then their abilities occur. That means that our good old friend Restock, this is like the 7th time I featured Restock in a lesson, because it's the only card that can do this. It can select itself when it resolves and put itself on the bottom of its owner's deck in a random order. If the action can't be completed because of a restriction in Step 2, the cost can't be paid in Step 4, or it doesn't change the game state Step 5, the game resets to before Step 1, and they select a whole new action. Now I'm going to take a breath, give you a chance to drop in those questions, but it seems like things are going pretty smoothly here. Alrighty, this brings us to attacking. This is how you generally win the game. That or driving your opponent insane and making them draw all the cards in the deck and milling them out and just sitting there while they do nothing and you do nothing and eventually they lose. For those of you who like that, I absolutely understand. It's so much fun. Anyways, it's so much fun to watch your opponent struggle and do nothing and fail to have an effect on you, not to sit there and do nothing. That's not fun at all. As an aside, one of my favorite things to watch is a good control mirror, particularly in Magic. I don't know how I feel about watching a control mirror in Star Wars Unlimited just yet, but in Magic, the back and forth counterplay of how many counter spells does each player have, who's going to draw 1 extra card, it's actually genuinely thrilling to watch top tier control players play against each other. But let's talk about units in combat. You can only attack with ready units, and only with 1 unit per action, unless an ability instructs you to attack with multiple units. if you are instructed to attack with multiple units, the attacks occur sequentially, and they're resolved fully before the next one begins, including all triggers as a part of that attack. If an ability instructs a player to attack, that player must make an attack if they have a legal attack. Toxic Korean, Mono Red Go Burr is pretty much the deck that I actually play. Now, watching Mono Red or like the Aggro Mirror, also incredibly fascinating because it's such a tight game. Like, watching two Sabine players just charge into each other and both of them are like, I activate my Sabine, deal 1 damage to both of our bases. And one player's like, yes, me too. We're also going to both take 1 damage to both of our bases because I think I'm the aggro player. And the other person's like, no, you're the control player here. Oh my god, I love watching aggro players just crash into each other. And then the game ends 30 seconds in because they're both so aggressive. Love it. Or it drags out forever because they are able to kill each other's units and they're not able to, like, get anything to stick for terribly long. But combat has 3 steps: declare attack, combat damage, and ending the attack. Each of these 3 steps has different types of triggers that can trigger during them. Our first step is declare the attack. You choose a unit to attack with, you exhaust it, and you choose what you are attacking. It must be an enemy unit in the same arena, or an enemy base. If there's a sentinel in the arena that it is attacking from, it has to be attacking a sentinel unit. If the attack is illegal, you reset to before any attack was declared. Players become attacking player and defending player. While attacking and while defending abilities become active, units become attacking unit and defending unit, and on-attack abilities trigger. We could spend a minute talking about Sentinel and Strafing Gunship if people are curious. It has some very weird charts of what it can attack when, depending on where units with Sentinel are. And I don't quite have it memorized because it's wonky as all get out. If you go to resources/rules clarifications, one of the first few is a couple of tweets. It's not just one tweet, but several tweets from Tyler talking about how Strafing Gunship works with Sentinel. The short version is it's not terribly invested about or with Sentinels in the ground arena, unless there's a Sentinel in the space arena, in which case it can only attack Sentinels in the ground arena or the Sentinel in the space arena. If there isn't a Sentinel in the space arena, it can attack a Sentinel or a non-Sentinel in the ground arena, or it can attack the base. It is hard to track verbally. I recommend reading the tweets, and at some point we'll make a flowchart for it, because that seems like a fun thing for me to spend an afternoon doing. But on-attack abilities trigger, they also resolve here. Some of these will deal damage. This damage, not combat damage. The second step is, in fact, combat damage. Curse Strife says, I think if there's a Sentinel on ground, it still has to attack the Sentinel. Let me pull up my references, because we're going on tangent, folks. Everybody's surprised that Jonah's going on tangent. Or we'll at least be polite and pretend to be surprised. But let me pull this up, because I don't want to misinform folks. If there is no Space Sentinel, and there is a Ground Sentinel, it can attack any unit on the ground or the space. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. I want to answer Checkered's question first. Checkered asks, does it matter which order the when attack and on attack abilities trigger? I know there's a question on the Judge Cert exam that asks about it. So there are a couple things that are happening here. You'll have lasting effects, such as while attacking or while defending, versus on attack and, in fact, just on attack, right? Or on being attacked. I can't remember the language of those. if it is bolded and has a like on attack or when this unit is attacked, those are triggers, and those will trigger after the lasting effects or constant effects with the duration for the duration of combat begin to apply. And so if you have something that says that like looks to see, if you have a Jyn Erso which says when flipped it says whenever your opponent is, or whenever one of your units attacking the defending unit gets -1/-0, if there was a trigger that looked for the defending unit's power, it would always be including that -1/-0, and there'd be no way to not include that. I don't know if there are any circumstances in the game right now where it matters, but one of the things that we're trying to do is get these fundamentals drilled into our brain, because every once in a while they release a new card and it's like, hey, how does this work? And having those fundamentals prepared gets you there. Curse Strife says, never mind on strafing, the Sentinel keyword does specifically say in this arena. Yeah, that's why strafing gunship is weird. So if something is, if it is attacking a unit, if there's a Space Sentinel, it has to attack something with Sentinel. If there is no Sentinel, it can attack any unit it wants. Which is, it's weird because, I mean, it also kind of makes sense because it's a gunship flying from space, and like a guy who's blocking a doorway isn't going to be super effective at getting a starship to attack him more so than anybody else. So flavorfully, the gunship swooping down and attacking whoever it wants makes some amount of sense. But we move on. Tangents are fun. Strafing gunship, that's a fun thing. It probably won't be on the L1 test. I think that sort of thing is probably going to come from the L2 test, but something like that might show up on the L1 test. I'm not making any promises. Right, so after our on-attack triggers and when this unit is attacked, while attacking for this attack, etc., after all those become active, we go to combat damage. Immediately, the first thing that happens is the attacker and defender deal damage to each other. They assign damage equal to their power to the defending unit and put that many damage counters on the unit. Any other damage is not combat damage, even if it occurs during the combat damage step. For example, if your Greedo dies, flips over a card, and deals 2 damage to a unit, all in the combat damage step, that damage that's being dealt with the trigger is not combat damage. If a defender is defeated before combat damage, overwhelm damage will apply to the base. Also in this step, when defeated triggers occur. This includes a unit being defeated, the classic when defeated, or when this unit attacks and defeats a unit, or something like when this unit deals combat damage to a unit. All of these trigger during this phase at different points, and they all resolve or try to resolve simultaneously, and active player chooses the order in which players resolve their triggers, and then each player resolves their own triggers in the order that they choose. We're going to talk about that more with Monday's lesson, where we cover abilities and effects. These triggers, so when this unit attacks and defeats a unit, or when this unit deals combat damage to a non-leader unit while attacking, these triggers resolve in combat damage and will resolve even if the unit is defeated in combat. Jango Fett is just looking to see if it attacked and defeated a unit, not that it survived, and Rook is just looking to see that it dealt combat damage. However, we have when this unit completes an attack. A unit completes its attack during the end of attack step, which is the third step. Players cease to be attacking player and defending player, units cease to be attackers and defenders, and when this unit completes an attack, triggers occur. This is different from attacks and defeats. The unit has to survive the combat. And so that means This is just a slightly different category of trigger than when this unit attacks and defeats is, I killed you, I don't care if I survived. When this unit completes an attack, if the defender was defeated, is, I attacked, I killed you, and I survived, which is a little bit harder to pull off. But it's a functionally different trigger, and it's important to keep in mind. We're going to go over a couple of scenarios, and then we'll give you the opportunity to respond if you haven't taken this lesson before. I'm interested to see what you have to say. Chris Strife says, and now the most asked question in the Discord, can you claim the bounty twice if Bossk dies in the attack? The answer is no, I'm pretty sure. Please tell me that I'm right. I haven't actually read the card. I just remember a bunch of people saying no, and I think they're right. Now, okay, I'm confident that I'm right. I've read Bossk, and I'm confident that I'm right. Now, can anybody in the class explain why I'm confident that I'm right? Bossk says, when you collect a bounty, you may collect that bounty again. Use this ability only once each round. I'll give y'all a little bit of time to come up with an answer. If any of you who don't already know the answer want to share that. If you already know the answer, don't spoil the fun for everybody else. He does leave play because he dies, but the other unit also left play, so isn't this happening at the same time? That's essentially the question that most people are asking. Isn't the bounty happening at the same time as Bossk is being defeated? And the answer to that, and I'm going to slow roll so that people can type out answers or can think about it for a second, is all of these triggers trigger at the same time at points during combat. Units are defeated, leave play, and then triggers such as bounties, which are when defeated triggers, begin to resolve, and by the point that they begin to resolve, by the point you are able to actually collect the bounty, Bossk is no longer in play. But, alrighty. One of our examples. We have a strafing gunship. It is upgraded with a devotion, and it attacks a Tarfful. What happens in this combat? We're bringing up strafing gun. I forgot that strafing gunship was in this lesson. However, this is not a Sentinel question, so it makes life a little bit easier. If folks have any answers that they want to drop into chat, now's your time. I'll play Jeopardy theme music in my head because I don't have like a soundboard where I can hit it real quick, and I certainly don't remember it well enough to like hum a few bars for you, but you can pretend that I'm humming a few bars Jeopardy theme music while I'm buying time for those of you who are thinking about this to think about this. That should be enough time for you to have read the cards, looked at what would happen, and come up with an answer. So, several things are going to happen here. Strafing gunships while attacking activates. Tarfful gets -2/-0. Restore triggers. Alex heals their base for 2. Combat damage occurs. The gunship deals 4 damage because it gets +1 from devotion, and Tarfful is dealing 1 damage because he has 1 power as it is reduced by gunship. After all of that, Tarfful's ability triggers. It deals 4 damage to a ground unit. That's it. Pretty straightforward. The Tarfful ability will trigger during combat damage. And so if, for example, Tarfful was attacked by a unit that has a completes an attack ability, Tarfful might be able to defeat that unit before it is able to complete the attack. This is not... So, Tarfful isn't a trig... Because it is dealt combat damage and isn't defeated, that is, again, different from the completes an attack or survives an attack trigger. This is a combat damage trigger, not a makes it to end of combat trigger. Alright, example number 2. We have a 5th brother upgraded with ruthlessness and attacks a general's guardian. what happens? And again, Jeopardy theme music, doot doot doot. That's our example of theme music. You know what? A great way to spend some of this time? Reading the cards. Fifth Brother is a 2/4 with Raid 1 for each damage on him. And on attack, you may deal 1 damage to this unit and 1 damage to another ground unit. Ruthlessness, which is upgrading the Fifth Brother, grants +2 power and +0 HP, and the attached unit gains, when this unit attacks and defeats a unit, deal 2 damage to the defending player's base. Finally, General's Guardian is a 4-cost 4/4 from Twilight of the Republic, and has, when this unit is attacked, create a Battle Droid token. Jeopardy theme music fades out, and we go on to our answer. On attack triggers, Fifth Brother and General's Guardian both trigger. Alex chooses the order in which players resolve their triggers. Alex, in this case, will choose for Nico to create a Battle Droid token, or for Nico to resolve their triggers first. Nico creates the Battle Droid token, then Alex resolves their own triggers, deals 1 damage to the Battle Droid token, defeating it, and 1 damage to Fifth Brother. Fifth Brother now has Raid 1. Fifth Brother's Raid ability applies for +1/+0, and combat damage occurs. Fifth Brother deals 5 damage, 2 base power, 2 from Ruthlessness, and 1 from Raid. General's Guardian deals 4 damage back. Then we have defeat triggers. Fifth Brother is defeated in this combat damage step, and so the trigger from Ruthlessness resolves, dealing 2 damage to the defending player's base. Alright, that is it for this lesson. We're going to cut back to me. We're going to hang out here in case anybody has any questions about this broadcast, this lesson, anything along those lines, anything about action timing, and all that sort of good stuff. I'm also going to take a couple minutes now to announce a couple of things. Some of them are very exciting. Some of them are less exciting. And some of them I don't know how to judge their excitement levels. One, I want to remind folks that this upcoming, not tomorrow, but next week, 7-ish days from now, 6-ish days from now, Tim, the founder of Cascade Games and my boss, will be at Spiel Essen in Germany. Spiel Essen is a rather large gaming convention, I think with over 100,000, like close to 150,000 attendees over the course of the weekend. His explicit purpose in going to Germany for this convention is to meet with members of the community. He's planning on doing a couple of meetups, probably at like a hotel lobby, maybe like somebody mentioned an Irish pub, and that sounds exactly like the sort of thing Tim would go for. If you're in Germany or near Essen next week, which is October 2nd, what is it? He's going to be there from the 3rd to the 6th, so if you're near Essen from October 3rd to the 6th, Tim would love to say hello to you, to chat with you, talk about any concerns, comments, questions you may have. If you are able to make it to one of his meetups, he has some convention promo Vader and Luke's from 2023, I believe, that he's going to be able to give out to folks. He is really excited to meet folks. He is also planning, I believe, on doing some sort of office hours. So if you're not able to make it to one of the meetups where they hope to have 10, 15, 20 people just chatting about the program all together all at once, he's planning on holding some sort of office hours, location and exact timing to be determined, but it'll give you an opportunity to have a one-on-one chat with him at some point during the show. What else can I talk about? The next 3 weeks after this one, I'm going to be traveling on Fridays, which means no Friday broadcasts. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to get a more consolidated time for these broadcasts, because for most of October, it's going to be one broadcast a week, and so we're going to be doubling up on a lot of broadcast lessons. So it won't be until, like, I think October. I think my next Friday broadcast. Let me pull up a calendar real quick. I'm going to be busy the 4th, the 11th, and the 18th. So yeah, my next Friday broadcast will probably be on the 25th. I'll still be doing my regular Tuesday broadcasts. So I'll be here on the 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. But I'm going to consolidate and do some double broadcasts on some of those. I have information on shirts. We have our first shipment of official Judge shirts. If you're hanging out here, this is the first time I'm publicly announcing it. We're going to be sharing the link to purchase those shirts sometime mid to late next week. We have shared it with our October Planetary Qualifier judges, as we have limited quantities, and we want to make sure that those judges who are going to be judging official FFG sanctioned competitive events have opportunity to get them before other folks. I understand that a lot of people are excited about these shirts, but they will be available for sale sometime next week to the general public. They are, and I can go into detail. You know what? I'm going to spend some time now going into detail about this. So the shirts are only going to be available in the United States for now. I know that is not what a lot of people want to hear, but the shirt design and the manufacturing process need to be approved by Disney. They're one of our business partners, and they have standards not only in quality of material and quality of manufacturing, but the manufacturing process and making sure that it is ethically manufactured. It's part of their brand. It's something that we deeply support. However, that means that we need to go through Disney-approved or LFL-approved manufacturers. On top of that, shipping textiles, shipping clothing to other countries generally comes with relatively high shipping fees. And so we're looking into finding manufacturers in Europe, in South America, in Asia, so that we don't have to deal with those shipping fees, those import tariffs, because that would just make the shirts unreasonably expensive, and making the shirt cost an ungodly amount of money for certain people and less for others is something that we want to try to avoid. And so for this first wave, they're going to be US only. The design, I don't have a picture that I can drop in the chat just yet. I'll drop it into the Discord when it becomes available. It's going to be the same as the design you saw for the judges at Gen Con. It's going to be that blue bowling shirt buttoned down with some black vertical stripes. It's going to say Star Wars Unlimited on the back. It's going to say Judge and Star Wars on the front. And again, we have limited supply of these. We can't... Shipping is about 2 weeks, so if you have a planetary qualifier in the first 2 weeks, you should have access to the purchase link now and should make that purchase sooner rather than later if that's something that you want to be wearing to that event. We want to expand our locations quickly, but it's not going to be something that we can do quickly due to the restrictions on it. It's also very limited in the sizes we offer. I think we go from small to 2XL. Again, that's something that we want to expand, but we have to find manufacturers. So we're looking for a group of manufacturers that will be able to design a good design. And like a design that we like and one that's approved by Disney. So let me answer some questions real quick. Checkered asks, is there a plan for judge points you can earn from doing locals, majors, etc.? Right now, there isn't any plan for explicitly judge points. You're not going to have like a score or anything along those lines. We will have it so that your event history is supported, and so somebody can look at what your event history is. I don't hate the idea of some sort of at-a-glance value or indicator to show a tournament organizer, an event organizer, roughly how much experience you have. However, I don't want judges to be like, well, I have 700 points, and so therefore you should listen to me because you only have 200 points. That is not a healthy... That's not healthy. The more stats you give to... I'm going to call us players because we are gamers. The more stats you give to gamers, the more they're going to compare those numbers, and they're going to develop stratification. It's going to happen with levels. People are going to say, well, I'm a level 5, you should listen to me. And I really don't want to have that happen, and adding more stats is a way for... that just incentivizes or creates more avenues where that can happen. However, I think something like having a couple of breakpoints of, like, being a rookie, being an expert, being a master of you've done 0 to 5, 5 to 15, 15 to 25, or 25 or more casual tier events, local competitive tier events, destination competitive events, just so somebody can quickly look at 3 stats and they don't get an exact number. It's just this broad classification of like bronze, silver, gold, or something along those lines. Uncouthism says, so if I know someone in the US who can get the shirt to me, can I have it sent to them? Yep. It is going to ship to US shipping addresses. If you want to use Judge Mail, you can absolutely use Judge Mail or any other system. If you have like a P.O. box in the United States, you can use that. Checkered asks US and Canada or just US. I am 99% sure that it is just US. I do get up to Canada relatively frequently, but I can't guarantee any timelines on that, and I don't have the fulfillment bandwidth. I'm not able to be a fulfillment agency for Canadian judges. It's something that I considered offering some folks, but I think too many people would be excited about it, and I would not be able to manage that feasibly. Uncouthism also says, also, if I know a manufacturer within Asia, how do I get in touch with you to set up something? Also, I'm in logistics and can arrange supply chain. So, unfortunately, it's not with Cascade Games that you need to set things up. The manufacturer needs to be approved by Disney before we can even start that conversation. I have no idea who at Disney you would talk to about approvals. And, like, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, I'm a manufacturer, I don't think we even know who to talk to at Disney, so we can't be like, all right, let's get this conversation started, or being like, hey, we want to work with this manufacturer. Disney, can you check them out? I don't think that's something that we can facilitate at this point in time, although it would be great to be able to work with manufacturers in various regions. Checkered says, points that you can redeem in a Judge store as currency. I don't believe there's any intention of having points that you can redeem as currency. The currency in the Judge merch shop will be real money dollars. While I would love to have that sort of loyalty or rewards program, those come with a very high logistics and financial burden that right now is myself, Tim, and Chris part-time. That's not something that we cannot afford that burden, frankly. It's something that I would love to have. There's a lot of cool stuff that I'd love to be able to give to judges, whether it be name badges, cool play mats, that sort of thing. Like, being able to earn a shirt that you don't have to pay for would be incredible. However, that's not something that our finances supports right now. With that, let's see, we talked about shirts, we talked about Essen, we talked about broadcasts. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Hey chat, am I forgetting to talk about anything? I haven't mentioned it to you, so you'd have to be psychic to know. But I'm going to think about it for a second more. In the meantime, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in here. I Jar Jar Binks preview card. I do not have a Jar Jar preview card that I can share with you at this point in time. How's that for whetting your appetite? Yeah, I think that's everything. I appreciate the questions that you asked and the workarounds for the barriers that we unfortunately currently have in place. That's gonna uh, help when I go to the 2,500 people in the Discord and say, hey, we have a limited number of shirts available, and people say, I want them, how do I get them? I don't live in the United States, how can I help you get more? Having those answers, having answered those questions already, makes my life a lot easier when I get asked them again. Checkered says, if you would like, I can go over the Pokemon program with you if you want any info on how that works to get some ideas. I'd love to have a chat at some point, given that it's 1 a.m. here and I'm waking up at 9 for D&D. That's probably going to have to be a conversation for another day. But if you send me either a direct message on Discord or an email at jonah@cascadegames.com, I would be more than happy to have that conversation either asynchronously over time or at some point in the future when I just flatly have time. I think that there is a lot that we at Cascade Games can learn from what other communities and other games are doing with their systems. With that, thank you so much for showing up, and I'll see you on Monday to discuss abilities and effects part 1, because oh boy, there's a lot of words in that section. Have a good one.